Hello, everybody. Mark Schaftlein with you, and this is Election Edge Monday's edition. 6 o'clock back east, 3 o'clock here on the West Coast, and we've got a special treat for you today on Monday. Obviously, we're going to get into everything on the Trump assassination attempt. I'm very familiar with that area and that golf course. But first, I'd like to bring Mark Rice into the situation here. Mark is running as the Republican candidate for the 8th Congressional District in Illinois. Mark, happy to have you on Election Edge. Welcome to the show.
Mark, thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here. Ready to get into
Yeah,
it. We got lots
yeah,
to
we
talk
really
about,
are.
lots
We
going on.
we got a lot to get into. Mark, every time we finish Election Edge on Friday, I'm thinking, well, what could possibly happen over the weekend that's going to top this past week? And yet it always happens. Every weekend something. We're now, Mark, and what I can not, it's hard to even argue that this is now the craziest presidential campaign probably in our lifetimes. I mean, I don't need to rehearse it for you, but one candidate forced out, two assassination attempts. I mean, Mark, I'm troubled by a couple things here related to this. I'm not going to criticize the Secret Service because I'm familiar with that area and it looks like they did an excellent job. But one thing really bothers me is the temperament and the tone of the Democratic Party referring to Trump as Hitler-esque, a threat to democracy. Even Hakeem Jeffries, he should know better, the Speaker of the House, kind of downgrading MAGA Republicans as if it's a sin to be a MAGA Republican. And I think, Mark, that rhetoric that is spewing from the liberal Democrats, I think it's having an effect on some of these people. I mean, you're a candidate, you're out among the people. Talk to it both as a candidate and your personal feelings about what you saw over the weekend.
Well, Mark, I pray for Donald Trump every day and every night. And I do see it every day and every night because I'm out there and I am feeling it, I'm on the front lines of it, let's say. So I'm visiting with wonderful people every day and I get a lot of support, but every once in a while we will come across these just crazy people who have been gaslit by not only Hakeem Jeffries and my opponent Raja Krishnamurthy, these leftist, Democrats, I don't know what you'd like to call them, but they think it's okay to have this rhetoric at such a high level, such a high pitch, and it's constant and it's relentless. And then you have their partners in the media, and of course not you, but the mainstream media is right on board with that kind of rhetoric, comparing Trump to Hitler and blaming everything and anything on Trump and on fellows like myself. They actually call me an extreme MAGA Republican, and I just say, spell my name right when you do that. I don't hide from that. But look, it has an effect. There are some people that are weak-minded that watch CNBC and MSNBC and the Clinton News Network, and they're affected by this. And so much so, there is a thought exercise, and I'm a Jewish guy, so this Hitler reference is something that I take serious. I lost family in the Holocaust, but the thought exercise is if you could go back in time, which we can't, so it's just an exercise. But if you could go back in time and you had the opportunity to be there with Hitler before he became, the head of Germany and so forth, would you assassinate him? And it's an interesting thought exercise. I mean, he killed millions of people and just tried to destroy the world. And there are plenty of people who would say yes to that. And really, it's really the same thing. Fast forward, they're saying, it's of course completely untrue, but they are saying and trying to persuade people that Donald Trump is some kind of Hitler, which of course he's not. But you can see how that can, then the next step can be that there are people that will take matters into their own hands and try to eliminate. And let's face it, between what the government's doing to attacking him and the media every day attacking him, they're trying to get him to lose at very best, and at worst throw the poor guy in jail and ruin his business and his family, and doing everything they can, and they're not succeeding. And therefore, I suppose you have a few crazies out there that actually will do what we saw just yesterday. And it's got to stop, and we've got to speak up. And people who have morals and values have got to set the record straight and speak loudly and not be afraid of these people that are against God, against morals, against values, against common sense. And we've got to speak out. And that's what I'm doing. That's why I'm running for Congress.
Mark, the dehumanization of Donald Trump is it's just flabbergasting. I mean, literally, and MSNBC, they have these crazies call in, but it's not just them. It's the far left-wing radicals in that Democratic Party and these uncontrollable online social media posts where roughly a third of the party wishes these assassins had been successful. I mean, that is the most brazenly bizarre thing. And, when Harris is giving her speeches, demonizing Trump, threat to democracy, it just all this adds up. And at a certain point in time, people snap. And this guy, again, who they apprehended, we're going to learn a whole lot more about him, but apparently he was donating to Democrats. The guy apparently voted for Trump in 2016, voted for Biden in 2020, was an ardent Harris supporter. So it's just troubling to me. The Democrats come out and Biden and Harris make the obligatory statement saying, we're against political violence, this, that, but then they go right out on the campaign trail, Mark, and again, just attacking Trump unrelentlessly. And that brings me to my question. You are out on the front lines. You're meeting with constituents, some favorable to you, some unfavorable to you, but you're out there meeting them. When you have a situation like this happens, how does it make you feel when you're out there campaigning? I mean, I'm sure you have some type of security detail, but nothing like, a former president or a president has. When you see this type of potential violence, how does it affect you when you're on the campaign trail?
Well, I'm hardened to it because I live in Chicago, which, let's face it, the Democrat Party is not the Democrat Party of my parents. It has gone so far to the left, and there are so many people in the Democrat Party, not all of them, of course, but maybe it's a third of them, I think, as you said, that are so far to the left with the squad, with AOC, Rashida Tlaib, and frankly, my opponent, Raja Krishnamurthy, is one of those. Not just how they vote, but it's the dangerous rhetoric. And here in Chicago, for example, we have this crazy sort of upside down, Palestine movement, which goes around destroying things, death to America, death to Jews, death to Israel. I'm Jewish. So I'm in those we'll call them protests. I call them terror support rallies. That's really what they are. And I'm in there to protect some of the younger folks that are there. I'm an older guy. Frankly, I do have security. I'm also a concealed carry holder. I'm able to carry a gun legally here, and I can defend myself. But it is a bit scary. And I live in a very leftist state, in a leftist city, which really, they're not enforcing the laws. They actually, if you commit a violent crime, and this weekend I think we had 60 shootings in Chicago alone. So it's like living in the Middle East or Beirut or something. They call it Chirac. It's a real thing. I live right in it, and I am trying to do something about it to change it. My opponent is one of these leftists, one of these fellows with the terrible, rhetoric against not only Donald Trump, but frankly, anybody who believes in God, anybody who believes in conservative values, anybody who uses common sense instead of nonsense. So my opponent, for example, just a week ago voted, for example, to allow illegal aliens to vote. I mean, the kinds of things that these people are doing, their thinking is so upside down that when they see moral people and people with values, and often people who believe in God and people who just have plain old common sense, it triggers them. And some people are more triggered than others, and those are the people we really got to be careful of. And we try to look after them, and our police is here to protect us. The Secret Service is there to protect Donald Trump. But it is a bad thing, and the media is playing into it, and I call them out on it every day, and I call out my opponent and others in this state because that's where I am. But it's all over the country. It's widespread. And, you can, like you say, listen to Kamala, whatever you want to call her, and and or Biden before her. I mean, this isn't new. They are demonizing the right. They are demonizing conservatives. They are demonizing people who believe in God. They call us white supremacists and the whole thing. So part of me wants to laugh, part of me wants to cry, but part of me says all of us have to fight this thing and call it out as we're doing right now. And hopefully enough people will hear that we can pressure these fellows and say, this is not acceptable. Not acceptable. It's going to have to change. And we can change it at the ballot box when we get Donald Trump in there and we get myself in there and others. We really can. We can, use the bully pulpit, as they say, to get that information out there and to show people that conservatives aren't the enemy. The enemy is the media and the left, which is gaslighting them and triggering them and frankly treating them like puppets on a screen to get them to do their bidding, all the way as much as, unfortunately, trying to kill President Trump.
And you mentioned the Hamas wing of the Democratic Party, and it is evident that, and I don't sugarcoat it, because the far left-wing radicals in the Democratic Party, they are favoring Hamas. They go out there openly with Palestinian flags. I witnessed it, Mark, last year on campuses here in Southern California, University of California, Los Angeles, UC Irvine. I remember the day they broke it up. There was like 6 helicopters flying overhead, 60 paddy wagons. I happened to be on the phone with General Flynn that day. I said, General, I think they're going to take this thing down today. And he goes, from the sound of it, you're right. And they did. But I guess more to a point here, you're right about the Democratic Party. I mean, Joe Biden, his administration was the furthest left in my lifetime. It makes Barack Obama's administration look like a center, and it makes Bill Clinton's look damn near conservative. So if you take what Kamala Harris stands for, and Mark, I know that her policy, she doesn't want to talk about them, but in the event she won this election instead of Donald Trump, her policies would take this country further to the left, even to the left of Joe Biden, if you can believe that possible. Yeah. And we'll get into a little bit of that a little bit later. But Mark, I want you to talk about your campaign here. You're out among the voters, both people that support you and those that support your opponent. What are the key issues you run into that really are driving people to get to the voting box?
Well, first of all, I want to say I agree with you 100% what you just said, Mark. And to me, it's unimaginable. It's not acceptable, and it's unimaginable that we could move even further to the left. So I'm running against a guy who actually, this is how he got his start. He got a law degree, actually from Harvard, which in my book, first he's disqualified just for that. But anyway, right after college, he went and worked for Obama Biden in their campaigning for Obama and Biden. And of course, when they won, as is often the case, he was rewarded with a nice little job in the White House working for the administration. So this is a guy that votes 100% with the administration and has views that maybe they weren't as far left as they are today, but today he, just like the rest of them, have moved so far to the left that we've got to do something to take it back. So here I am, a guy who's not a politician. I never wanted to run for office. I frankly am still doing it because I feel a duty to my kids and grandkids and your grandkids, because we live in the greatest country that's ever existed. And if we let these leftists take over, I fear for the future. I fear for now, frankly. So anyway, the issues that you asked me about, Mark, of course, take the 3 biggest issues would be the border. And Tom Homan, who I'm sure you know, endorses me, as does General Flynn and pretty much, all of our friends. But Tom Homan gave me a nice rhyme for my campaign, which is, and Tom, for those of you who don't know, was head of ICE under Donald Trump. And so my slogan is, bring back ICE, vote for Rice. It's all about closing the border. Yeah, we like that. It's kind of cute.
I love it.
But we want to stop the fentanyl, right? And we want to stop the illegals. And frankly, we've got to deport the ones that are here. It's going to be very hard and painful and expensive, but we can do it. And then the second issue would be, by the way, it's 110,000, mostly kids are dying of the fentanyl. And I've been to several funerals of my friends' children. I mean, it's just devastating and terrible. So we call those those cartels, Sinaloa and others, the terrorists that they are. Can you imagine killing 110,000 American, mostly
Yeah.
young people? So anyway,
Yeah.
we go down there, we bring them to justice, we stop that stuff. And then here in Chicago, I don't know if you can relate in California, maybe you can, but crime is out of control. Here, the arrest rate, just the arrest rate, forget about the Soros appointed judges that don't prosecute and the district attorneys that don't do anything. The arrest rate is 5%. So if you're a criminal in Chicago, you have a 95% chance of getting away with it. If you get caught, they let you ride out on what's called cashless bail. It's part of something here
Right.
locally called the Safety Act, which I would be for getting rid of. And then of course they don't prosecute them, and when they do, they're often found innocent. So we are living in terrible times here. And then I would say the third issue, by the way, and maybe it should be the first issue, depends on where you come from, but inflation and the economy is just devastating everybody. I worry about the dollar. I worry about all these foreign wars that we're in that seem to be endless situations because we have such weak leadership that all of that sends our dollar lower and makes us less competitive in the world. And the only way that that gets ironed out is through inflation, which we have. And they tell you inflation's coming down or it's 3%. I mean,
Yeah.
we're not stupid. And by the way, that's a silver lining in all of this. When people see Donald Trump getting shot at, they have to think about that. They see it with their eyes. They can't. The media can spin it any way they want. When they go to the grocery store and they pay 50% more for things, or their taxes are up here as much as 50, 100%. People feel it, they see it, and I think common sense is coming back. And there will always
Well,
be
Mark,
those leftists that we can't. Oh,
hold that,
go
hold that,
ahead.
hold that thought, because we're a little bit past break. We're going to take our first break, but when
Sure.
we come back, Mark and I are going to dive into those issues and why he's trying to make a difference in Illinois District Number 8. We'll be back in 2 minutes.
Throughout history, the spirit of patriotism has prevailed. The battles may have changed, but the values remain the same. Today, in 2024, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment where the call for unity, freedom, and a better future echoes louder than ever. For more than 10 years, Patriot Mobile has been committed to supporting the values that make our nation great. With affordable plans and reliable nationwide coverage, Patriot Mobile is not just a wireless service. It's a call to action for those who believe in the American dream. Because this year is not just any year, it's the most important year since our nation's founding. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile.
The world is about to shift. Banks are going cashless globally with the emergence of central bank digital currency, which will bring with it programmable money and the ability to turn on or off your purchasing power based on your digital social profile. It's like the equivalent of spyware in your bank account. You need to get out of the system with the world's safest and most precious assets, silver and gold. Call Kirk Elliott Precious Metals at 720-605-3900. That's 720-605-3900.
720-605-3900, folks. Dr. Kirk Elliott, great company, great friend of Patriot.tv. And with these tumultuous times we're in, keep a little bit of your assets in precious metals. Call Dr. Kirk and he'll take good care of you. Hey, Mark, you were just talking about the issues that are people in your district are most concerned about. You mentioned the economy. You know, we've had 20% inflation under Biden and Harris. That's a fact. We had 1.5% inflation under Donald Trump. Trump seems to be focusing the vast majority of his efforts on border security because to a lot of people, that is the number one issue. They see thousands of people flooding across that border, 10 to 12 million or higher since he came into power,
Oh, yeah.
along with Harris. And then, as you referenced, it's not only just the drugs and the crime that are associated with that, but the social cost imposed on these cities by having to deal with this, because you have to keep educating the kids. You can't have people out on the streets. You got to be fed. I mean, there's all kind of social implications to this besides the crime and the drugs that go with that. And then, Mark, you top that off with some of the local issues that you're having to deal with. You just mentioned about 95% on the crime situation there, about people aren't even being prosecuted. Mark, it's a wonder to me, with all those issues, how this race could be close. But the fact is, it is. And the country is so divided ideologically. It's almost, Mark, in a camp where if you're conservative and you want to support the police, you're in one camp. And
Right.
if you're liberal and you're anti-police and you donate to these various organizations, you're a hero. I mean, I've literally
Right.
never seen things so upside down as they are right now. And that's why I want to thank you and people like you who have been a successful businessman. You've run multiple businesses. You've done real well for yourself. And much like President Trump, you're sacrificing that to go into the political arena to try to make a difference.
Yeah, well, we all have to sacrifice something because they are trying to take it away from us. But I'll tell you, Mark, I feel that if you watch TV and you listen to the media, it's as you say, it seems like there are these people that just have everything backwards and upside down. But it really isn't as bad as it is. I go to a lot of churches. I go to a lot of places just where I'm meeting plain old folks, not people on the left, not people on the right, but just people. And people are good. And what we read about every day and what we see in terms of assassins, or if we go to these campuses with these Palestinians, or these Antifa riots and so forth, we're seeing the worst of society. And they are being paid and influenced by not just the media, but by all kinds of folks that really don't have our interests, including folks that influence the leaders of our Congress, of our Senate, and even currently in the White House. One thing we know about Donald Trump, I know people that don't like Donald Trump, but I don't think that even they believe that Donald Trump can be bought and influenced by our enemies. The same way that, for example, the Hunter Biden stuff that's coming out now with the laptop and other things. So I really think we're going to take our country back. I do believe in God. There is a God. That is a real, God is real. There are two genders. There are just certain things that there is no question that they're certain. People can doubt them if they would like, and they can think that we can, live in some kind of crazy place where people don't know if they're a boy or a girl, and crime is legal like they're trying to make it here. But now, like I said, people are waking up to it, and I am seeing people, and every day I see God. I see God in everything, and I'm telling you, things are getting better. Like what happened to our past president the other day when he turned a millimeter and the bullet missed him. I think that the better angels of our nature are going to win out, and there are a lot more good people than bad people. And the people who are asleep, the people on the couch, the people who have their head buried in the sand a little bit, these are good people. They're going to church, or they're raising their family. They're working, especially now with the economy being the way it is. But it's being revealed. Their eyes are opening to what's going on with inflation, with crime, with the border, with the fentanyl, with the wars that are going on. By the way, my own son, one of my sons, I've got 4 lovely kids, and one of them was mugged and robbed by 3 Venezuelan illegals right here in Chicago. And they sprayed this jelly mace, some kind of a spray into his eyes, and he'll be fine. But this affects everybody. If you live in Illinois especially, you can't ignore this stuff. You can't ignore the prices of things. You can't ignore that our income isn't keeping up with taxes and inflation and the cost of goods and services. And you can't ignore that our state is going bankrupt. We can't afford, even if we thought it was the right thing to do to have an open border, which we do not, we simply can't afford it. Not the medical, not the education, not the rise in crime, housing, they get cell phones, et cetera, et cetera. It's all so far beyond the pale of what is reasonable and what is logical that we're getting those people in the middle, I think, to come, our way, the conservative way, and we're going to see that at the ballot box. I think a lot of people are going to be surprised.
Well, I think you're right about that. I did a little bit of research. Obviously looking up your race, I saw some polling data that showed you were ahead by a couple points.
Yeah.
Now that polling was a little bit dated, but tell us about your race, Mark. Are the demographics? Are you in the lead right now? Your opponent, you've clearly painted as a radical leftist along the lines, of the squad members, and thank God a couple of those people got beat in their primaries, Jamal Bowman and the one down in St. Louis. But I mean, Illinois is a Democratic state, so anytime a Republican runs, you probably have uphill battle, but it sounded like you're holding your own, and in actuality, you've got a damn good shot at pulling off this win, Mark.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you the bad news first. The bad news first is my opponent, I call him Radical Raja, he has $17 million. And of course, that puts him in the lead in Illinois by like a factor of 300%, where he's raised more money than anybody. So he's spending it against me and for him. He just sent out a mailer this week, and he probably spent $500,000 on a piece of mail praising that he has 100% approval rating by Planned Parenthood. So I would have spent money to send out that mailer. So it's interesting. It's sad, but it's, I find humor in it that people are so corrupt. And my slogan for the campaign is no more career politicians. And what they've done is they've let a business guy like me that's been around behind the curtain. And these guys are so corrupt and so dishonest that it's even surprising to me. So I'm pointing that out, and I think for the fact that I'm just a regular guy and I'm not a politician, and the guy that I'm running against is a poster child for everything that is wrong with our leftist-run state and country currently, that people know right from wrong, and they're coming our way. So it is true, the last poll showed me up by 3 points. That's within the margin of error, so I just tell people that it's virtually a dead heat, and he's been around forever, so he bribes people, and he does all kinds of things and spends a lot of money, which, incumbents have the power, and I certainly do not. But I've got something he doesn't have, which is honesty and integrity. And I'm not a career politician. I don't even want to be a politician. What I'd like to do is get in there and take him out. And once I'm in there, I want to expose all these guys, because really it's some of these politicians, it's not them that are destroying our country. It's the people behind them. They're all controlled by these big money interests, including foreign governments that want to destroy us, and corporations, which by definition are self-interested. And I just say it's common sense that I have versus nonsense. And now, like I said, people really see it. So we are out there fighting every day. I've got 550 volunteers knocking on doors. We're big on the ground game. And, you say Illinois is a blue state. It's true. But if you look at a map, south of I-80, or basically, 80, 90% of the state is red. It's just this little communist area of Chicago that's blue. And my district only has 3 precincts in Chicago. So that's 3 out of 507. So less than 1% of my district is in the city. And by the way, those are the 3 precincts where a lot of the police officers and firemen live, because they have to live in the city. They're forced to, and they know what's up. So they tend to live really on the outskirts of the city. And anyway, those 3 precincts, 2 of the 3, went for Trump just 4 years ago. So I'm going to win those, and I think I'm going to win the rest. There's 3 counties, Kane, DuPage, and Cook. And I have very carefully worked this district, which, by the way, has been Republican 14 out of 30 years. So 16 years Democrat, 14 Republican. So don't write Illinois off. And another thing you might want to know that I don't think people realize was there's 17 congressional districts in Illinois. 3 of them are Republican, only 3 out of 17. That is 18%. The state votes 40 to 45% Republican. So we're batting way below our weight. And even if I win, and even I'm helping some other candidates as well, we might flip as many as 2 or 3 or 4 districts. And if we do that, that sounds like a lot, but we'll still be below that 45% number. So we'll still be far underrepresented in the US Congress. And really, it just takes people like me that are willing to use their own money and their own work. I mean, I've quit my job. My kids run my business and my wife, and I'm doing this full time, and I'm not going to give up until we win. I'm going to work every day as hard as I can. And I've got good people like you and General Flynn, who you mentioned, and others who are supporting me. And that's how we do it.
Well, Mark, you come across just as honest as the day is bright, and that you're a practical guy, practical solutions. So again, my pleasure to have you on. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, Mark and I are going to dive into some of these national issues, talk a little bit about the presidential race. Some recent polling came out. It's mixed at best, but at least in Mark's case, sounds like he's in a swing district. And when you take an honest guy, put him in a swing district, we have good opportunity there. So that could be a really nice thing in Illinois and for the United States House of Representatives. All right, we'll be back in about 90 seconds.
Former National Security Advisor Lieutenant General Michael Flynn pleaded guilty today to lying to the FBI.
He was one of the most respected generals in the military.
Every American needs this historical DVD keepsake. Flynn delivered the truth, whatever the cost. Hand signed by General Michael Flynn. Order now at the Patriot TV store. Use promo code PTV at checkout to get special savings. The Patriot TV store, a secure, hassle-free shopping experience.
The Donor Deck represents a groundbreaking independent crowdfunding initiative driven by patriots like you to bring back our esteemed President Donald J. Trump to office. With unwavering passion, we pledge all profits from the sale to MAGA Inc. and Fight Like a Flynn PAC. The exquisitely detailed challenge coin is a timeless collectible to be passed down to generations. It symbolizes your continuous dedication to assisting President Trump in his quest to rejuvenate America to its former greatness. Get your Donor Deck now. Go to the Patriot.tv store and click on Donor Deck. Enjoy the magnificent artwork and scripture on each playing card, knowing our appreciation for your continuous dedication to assisting President Trump in his quest to rejuvenate America to its former greatness. You'll get this keepsake collectible challenge coin acknowledging your support for Donald Trump's run back to the White House, and the Donor Deck of 52 exquisite playing cards, plus a beautiful display case to show your challenge coin. Go to the Patriot.tv store and get your Donor Deck now.
Hey folks, I've got the Donor Deck right on my desk. It's really cool. And you got the challenge coin that goes with it. There we go, right up there. Really nice stuff. So patriottv.store. If you're on patriot.tv, scroll down to Election Edge page, click there, and then you'll be able to get it there too. Two different ways to support the great patriots out there. Okay, Mark, we mentioned a little bit about, you talked about polling, and it's within the margin of error in your race. We're seeing mixed results on a national level too. I saw some polling that showed Donald Trump up by 2 points in North Carolina. That comes from the Trafalgar Group, a really well-respected polling outfit. I've also seen polling that shows Kamala Harris whittled Trump's lead in nearby Iowa. He was up like 16. Now he's up 4. I think he wins Iowa. I don't think that's going to be competitive. But we have seen a cross mix. I mean, at this point, on the Real Clear Politics average, Kamala Harris leads by 1.7%. Joe Biden at this identical date mark was up by 5.5%. Hillary Clinton on this identical date up 1.5%. So the polling remains very tight. The presidential race does look like it's going to come down to 7 swing states. Mark, if I was handicapping it right now, and I do it every day, so I would say the following. I believe Donald Trump will win Pennsylvania. I believe he will win North Carolina as he did the last 2 elections. And I believe he will flip Georgia back. And one of the reasons I think he may flip Georgia back is irony of irony. Black men under the age of 50, 25% of them are breaking for Donald Trump. And Mark, what are your thoughts on that? Because I see Trump outreaching to African Americans. I see the Hispanic community Joe Biden won it convincingly. I see the Hispanic community going towards Donald Trump, at least on a basis where it's very close between him and Harris. And we on this show, we hate talking about identity politics, but when you're facing a Democrat, you really have no choice because the Democratic Party is the party of identity politics. How are you seeing this national race, particularly in the swing states? And how are you identifying, with those two constituencies?
Well, I desperately want to make sure that Donald Trump wins, and we're right next to Wisconsin. I live, 45 minutes from the border there. So we've actually spent time up in Wisconsin knocking on doors and talking to folks, not for my race, but for the presidential race. And Michigan is also, believe it or not, pretty close. It's only about an hour and a half away. And I've also been over there. And of course, I've had the honor to visit with Donald Trump when he's come to both states. So we're working it. And I really see him winning all the swing states. I really do. And I got to tell you, when you talk about identity politics, or you break it down by some of these different groups, and I'm actually in one of those groups. I'm a Jewish American, and Jews, at least the non-religious Jews, religious Jews will vote for Trump like 95%. But the less religious Jews had been majority Democrat, and I have seen a massive shift. I'm almost certain, and most people, the Pew Report and other organizations are seeing Jews go from being Democrat to voting for Trump and voting Republican. I mean, how, and anyway, it's the same with the Black community. It's the same with the Mexican community or the Latin American community for various reasons. But here in Chicago, which has a very large Black community, and a lot of my friends are in that community, and we talk about it all the time, I think it's going to be more than 25%. So that's not just a Chicago thing. That's a national trend where you see African American, not just males, but women too. I was with a girl just a little while ago, and we were talking about that. Some of them are afraid to admit it. They're not putting a Trump sign in their yard because they're worried about how some of their friends might think about that. But when you talk to them privately, and by the way, when they get called by a poll, they may not want to say out loud who they're voting for. They may not want to admit that they're voting for Trump. But I got to tell you, it's a real movement, and we're seeing it. And I'm not so sure that it's reflected in those numbers that you talk about. I mean, those are polls, but as we saw when Trump won in 2016, the polls are not always right. And I think there is a phenomenon out there, especially since we all know how we did under Trump, and we now know how we did or are doing under Biden, Harris, and almost everybody. I don't care if you're a Democrat, Republican, red or blue. We all know we were much better off under Trump. And so they may not like the man. They may not like his tweets. They may not like something that they think he said because the media takes it out of context and repeats it over and over and over. And so they've been gaslit a little bit, but they just know in their heart that they need to do what's right. And what was right 4 years ago was Trump. And what's going on now for most people, it's not serving them well, whether they're African American, Mexican, Jewish, whatever they are. It really doesn't matter. If they're an American and they value freedom and they worry about their pocketbook, most people do. They worry about their safety. They worry about our country. I think they're going to come down for Trump. So I don't pay too much attention to polls. And we remember in 2016, that was a joke. Trump had no chance of winning. I forget what the chances were.
Well, I remember on election night in 2016, and all the polling gurus and Nate Silver out there, et cetera, it's a 99% chance he's going to win. And gradually, as the night went along, you could see the faces and the tears showing up.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about one thing you just said, because if Donald Trump ends up on November 5th, and let's say the Real Clear Politics average is 1.7, he will likely then win all 7 swing states, at least 6 of them, because Trump does outperform his polling numbers for the very reasons, Mark, that you just talked about. And think back about it, okay? When Joe Biden won the 2020 election, he won by about 4.5 points, but he was up, I think on election night, he was up like 7. So the polling numbers are exactly as Mark referenced. It's a point in time, it's a snapshot, but what you want to look for is trends. And the trend I'm seeing is that Kamala Harris reached a ceiling shortly at or very closely after the Democratic convention in your hometown. And Donald Trump had been steadily. Now, we don't know what the second assassination attempt is going to, how that's going to affect it. Because think about this, Mark, what we're really talking about here is a sliver of maybe 10% of voters who are undecided in 7 swing states. That's the audience that both candidates are going after. And I'm in your camp 100%. Just you and I talked about the violence earlier. Going against Trump, do you really want to put a Trump sign in your front yard if you think these crazy radical liberal leftists are going to come in and maybe spray paint your car or throw a rock through your window? I mean, these people don't care. I mean, now if you're in a nice area and it's balanced, that's one thing. But if you're in say a predominantly Democratic area, and that could be a high crime area, it could be a modest crime area, but if it's predominantly Democrats, based upon some of the crazy talk that comes out of some of these leaders, that is fermenting fuel to the fire. And you're probably not going to want to put that sign up. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. Yeah. And you may not respond to pollsters, but Mark, I think your point is, and this is why Trump tends to outperform his polling averages, they'll go into that voting booth or they'll mail it in and they will vote Trump. And that's why most political prognosticators will tell you if Donald Trump comes out of this election and he's at 48.5% or higher, that will become a landslide. Because think about it, Mark. Yeah. In 2016, he was at 46, still won. 2020, 47 and change, got beat. So if he's up there in that mid 48 to 49, I believe in all 7 swing states.
Yeah, no, I listen, if I were a betting man, I think he's going to win them all those swing states. There's a phenomenon with that group that you talk about, that 10, 15% of folks that are still in the middle. That's also exactly my target in my own race. And I identified them. I mean, I'm a business guy. I've analyzed this way using math and science. And you try to identify who those people are, where they live, what they look like, what they believe, what's important to them. And I think what we have found is you find people that are in the middle that no longer are willing to just sit on the couch. They are being affected by all of these things, whether it's the economy or crime, inflation, the border, et cetera. And those are the people that are going to vote. And so I don't see people getting all excited that aren't normally involved in the political process or the voting process. I don't see that group getting excited to vote in this election for Harris. I mean, I just don't see that at all. I see almost none of that. The people that maybe don't always vote that are going to come out to vote this time, they're triggered by these things. Once again, they may not want Donald Trump to babysit their children, but they do want to live in a country that's free. They don't want to go to war. They don't want inflation. They don't want crime. They don't want all these things. And those are the people that I think are going to vote. And we know that from polling. We know that from canvassing. I know that this weekend I handed out 1,800 cards. That means I shook hands with 1,800 people. And I talk every day to plain people. Now, I'll admit they're in Illinois, they're in my district, but I find that those swing voters, those voters that still are a little bit in the middle, it's not that they're in the middle because they're conflicted between good and evil. It's not that they're in the middle because they're uneducated. They're just busy. And most people are, and they should be. They shouldn't have to worry about this. And Democrats shouldn't be so far to the left. But they are, and they see it, and they see the effects of that. And those are the people that are going to get out there and vote. And like you said, they may not put out the signs and so forth. And it's not, by the way, as extreme as you might think, Mark, that they're worried about getting robbed or whatnot. It's just they don't, we all have neighbors. We all know people that their hair catches on fire when they see Donald Trump. I call it TDS, Trump derangement syndrome. It's a real thing. And so it's really for that reason, at a minimum and maximum, that they're worried about, some kind of violence. but people aren't really out there, voicing their support for Trump. But when they get in that private voting booth, I think most of those people are going to swing our way, and I have a lot of confidence that good is going to prevail over evil.
Yeah, I'm in your camp there, Mark. No question about it. All right, we're going to take our final break. Be back in 90 seconds. I want to turn out with Mark and a couple other key issues that have come up. So be back in 90 seconds.
The Donor Deck represents a groundbreaking independent crowdfunding initiative driven by patriots like you to bring back our esteemed President Donald J. Trump to office. With unwavering passion, we pledge all profits from the sale to MAGA Inc. and Fight Like a Flynn PAC. The exquisitely detailed challenge coin is a timeless collectible to be passed down to generations. It symbolizes your continuous dedication to assisting President Trump in his quest to rejuvenate America to its former greatness. Get your Donor Deck now. Go to thepatriot.tv store and click on Donor Deck. Enjoy the magnificent artwork and scripture on each playing card, knowing our appreciation for your continuous dedication to assisting President Trump in his quest to rejuvenate America to its former greatness. You'll get this keepsake collectible challenge coin acknowledging your support for Donald Trump's run back to the White House, and the Donor Deck of 52 exquisite playing cards, plus a beautiful display case to show your challenge coin. Go to thepatriot.tv store and get your Donor Deck now. Attention business owners, are you ready to advertise to millions of loyal patriots ready to buy your products or services? Here's your golden opportunity to advertise with Mark Schaftlein. When you advertise on Election Edge, you've aligned your company with a trusted voice and connected with an audience that shares your values. Mark hosts the exciting new live show that delves into every facet of the 2024 U.S. presidential election, offering insightful analysis, expert interviews, and up-to-the-minute coverage of the key events and developments throughout the election season. When you advertise on Election Edge, you're aligning your brand with integrity, loyalty, and a dedication to truth. Mark's audience is passionate, conservative, and committed to the values your business stands for. When given the choice, Mark's followers will buy your product or service over other woke companies. Don't miss this opportunity to elevate your brand with the power of Patriot TV. Reach out to us today at advertise@patriot.tv.
And we're back. Hey, Mark, let's talk a little bit about turnout, because that always seems to be a really critical issue. We know in 2016, the Trump turnout was massive. We know in 2020, and we're not going to get into why things happened, but Democrats did turn out in 2020. This year, we really have got to mobilize, and I'm hearing very positive things from the Trump campaign and from some candidates like yourself as far as who are going to be on the ground, and that some of the enthusiasm that the media tries to portray for Comrade Kamala may not be at the grassroots taking hold the way the media is trying to stick it down our throats. Mark, what are you seeing about turnout nationally, and then talk specifically about turnout in your race in Illinois 8?
Yeah. So nationally and locally, I'm not a politician, and frankly, I don't like politicians. But I decided to do this, and I did sacrifice, and we're going to take this country back. But my point is only in the last election and 2 elections before that, I've given money and my time, and I've been involved in other campaigns, including my own son, who ran for Congress right here, not in the same district as me, but right here in Illinois. And so I have a nice basis to compare what's going on now with what went on 2 years ago, 4 years ago, and 6 years ago. And there is just no doubt there is a massive difference. And I know you hear politicians, but they're mostly liars, don't forget. I'm not one of those, at least not yet. It's different. There are people now crying and emotional, and people sacrificing and giving money that never gave before, and going and knocking on doors and making phone calls that I see personally every day. And they say, I always thought politicians are all corrupt and they're all criminals, and the Congress has an approval rating of, I think 15%. I mean, we all know that they're corrupt, and most people don't want to engage. More people are engaging now than in I've ever seen in my lifetime. And certainly since I've been involved for the last few years, I see a lot more people engaged. And we are not stupid. We are, and Donald Trump certainly is not stupid. We are trying to target those people to turn out the vote. And one thing you hadn't talked about when you just talk about electioneering is Donald Trump, frankly, made a little bit of a mistake, in my opinion. And I love the man, so I hate saying that. But when he told people to only vote on election day and not ever to vote by mail and so forth, that probably or most certainly did hurt the vote, because you don't always know if you're going to be available on election day, or if the polls are going to be open and working, or what the weather is going to be like, or God forbid you should have a health issue and be unavailable or something. A lot of things can happen. And we have seen a 180-degree shift in that way of thinking to the way we're thinking now, which is trying to get everybody to get out there and vote. And we're even doing it with a lot of market intelligence, with consumer data and voting data. So for instance, in my own district, if you live in my district and you don't normally vote, but you have voted in the past and maybe you voted in Republican primaries, a bell goes off. And now we have consumer data. I hate that we have all this data because it's invasion of privacy, but we do. And the Democrats use it, so we're doing the same thing. And now let's say you're an NRA member and you own a gun, or you have a flag out front of your house, and you drive a pickup truck. What are the chances that that person is a Republican? It's almost 100%. So we are going to your door, we're emailing you, we're texting you, we're mailing you, and we're sending one of your neighbors, if not me personally, to ask you to make sure that you get out there and vote. And if you don't want to vote on election day, we will help you to fill out the forms or give you the forms so that you can vote by mail if you're out of town, and or to vote early, because you can vote for over a month ahead of the election. So that was never done, not by Republicans anyway. The Democrats, give them a little credit. That's the one thing they do masterfully, is they know how to work elections, at least here in Illinois. And they have unions and all kinds of workers that will work for them en masse to get that accomplished. Well, we don't typically have that. But like I said, now things are different. People have had it. There's like enough is enough. And they're willing to do a little bit of work just to make sure that their neighbors go vote. And we are getting those folks out to vote. And I'm telling you, that's not just a local thing. That's a national trend. And that's the difference between this election and 4 years ago. And so I think that's going to make a big difference. And you can't measure that, but we'll see in the polls, and we will see on election day. I think it's going to be pretty significant.
Mark, I'm in your camp on that. I'm buying what you're selling, because we've had a lot of data gurus come on Election Edge and talk about the importance of that. And let me just talk to all of our viewers and listeners. It is so important to the RNC that your vote gets banked early. Do not wait until Election Day. Get it in. And I think the safest way for you to do it is when early voting at precincts is allowed, go vote. Go get it done. Get your neighbors, get your friends, get your church members. Take people with you to the polling station. I think that's a lesson that we learned from the 2020 election. And then if your state has mail-in, like in my home state of Florida, you can mail in your ballot. You can actually track it. They will tell you along the tracking process once it's been received, and you can check online to validate that it's actually been counted. And the other advantage it gives the RNC is that once they know that your ballot is in and it's counted, they don't have to take precious resources, dollars, and focus their efforts on you. Mark's right. In the current modern technology era, they can micro-target specific voters based upon probabilities and trends, such that they're not wasting money to try to get someone who they know is going to be a Democrat and vote for a Democrat to obviously turn their stripes and vote Republican. But the systems are so complicated and so complex and so accurate. Mark, correct me if I'm wrong. They can identify marginal voters, people that lean Republican, people that are at least neutral or independent. Because, Mark, if we've said on Election Edge, we say it every show, A Republican can't win on their own. A Democrat cannot win on their own when 40% of the voters are independent. And Mark, I think
Yeah.
that, I mean, it varies district by district, but I think aggregately that's probably pretty close to a national average, right?
Yep, that is, and that's exactly what we're doing, Mark. And we're even doing things that are a little unorthodox. For instance, we'll have people that are worried about voter integrity. We'll have them go ahead and register to vote by mail, receive the ballot in the mail, and void that and take it into the polling place so they make sure that nobody can invalidate their vote. And then, of course, as you say, we are going to everybody, and as soon as we know that they voted early, we get the data the very next day, and that enables us to skip that voter and not spend the precious resources and money, which we don't have a lot of, and it makes us much more efficient in terms of getting the folks that still need to vote out there to vote. And of course, we have all our folks vote early so that they don't have to be busy on election day or even before that, so they can get out there and work and knock on the doors and do what we have to do to get people to vote. And I'm telling you, I've never seen it like this. I've never seen campaigns behaving in this way. And you know, unfortunately, 4 years ago, I don't think we really got the memo. But we've suffered now enough in the last 4 years that we know how important this is, and we're working not just hard but smart. And you're going to see that. You'll see the benefits of that.
Well, that's that's really important, folks, because think about this. But as we said earlier in the show, the Biden administration is the furthest leftist administration ever. And Kamala Harris is obviously she's moved to the center, Mark. She was against fracking. Now she's basically for domestic oil production. Again, Medicare for all. Now you can keep your private insurance.
Yeah.
Some of her economic ideas are so stupid. I'm not even going to waste the time talking about it. But I mean, they're that bad, folks. They are really, really horrific stuff. And we had Dr. Michael Busser on talking about this last week. But Mark, you got a minute left, okay? I've talked about some of her issues, how bad hers are. I'm going to let you close it out the last minute of the show, what you represent, what you stand for, and what your message is to the voters in District 8. Take it away.
Kamala Harris, Raja Krishnamurthy, they will lie to you, and they do lie to you, just as you say, Mark. You know, all of a sudden they're against something, now they're for it. They're all corrupt career politicians. We need to get rid of them. We're going to put somebody like myself in there that is here for the people, servant leaders for we the people, and we are going to take care of these things that, you know, I'm in the energy business my whole life. We're going to drill, baby, drill. We're going to get back to energy independence. We're going to stop the nonsense at the border. We're going to stop inflation in its tracks. We're going to stop spending on wasteful spending on needless things like the Department of Education. And we're going to not only secure the border, but we're going to take care, as Donald Trump has said, of these endless wars that we seem to be involved with. And with all of those things, we're going to take our country back. And I appreciate the time and the support. I'm at rice4congress.com, rice, the number 4congress.com. You can join us, and we're going to get back to the way things were, and God bless America.
Mark, it's been a privilege having you on Election Edge today. Best of luck in your campaign, and I hope to catch you before Election Day. We'll keep an eye on your race. Mark Rice, folks, get out and support him. All right, that's it for today. We'll be back tomorrow with another hard-hitting edition, Election Edge. See you on Tuesday.